So this will be 1B. This will be 1B. I hope folks, return. Okay, that didn't take so long, which is quite good. Yeah, but don't worry, one of these is I'm going to sing and then you hear. It should be free for your followers, no problem. I will even give you Jara. I'll sing, then I'll play instrument so you hear. I have different sides, Oloma Showa. But yeah, it's true, I do sing. I'm laughing because I don't talk about what we have done with music, but it is well. Well, thank you very much for that. We're back on the other platforms, and I don't know where I stopped. We had drums. I don't know where I stopped before. Oh dear. I'm going to go back just. And I was almost done with this. This session is an introductory session, right? Totally. Someone says, "Let me join as guest." Can I join as guest as well? Biaka 30 December. Chema 30 December, Nigeria. Domingo, yes. Chema 30 December, Nigeria. And what 30 December, Koja Kimo. Oro. Mo contract wo network anyway. Ati wo okay mo kan ko ká tó bẹ̀rẹ̀ lórí YouTube padà. I need to quickly do something. Tó bá ṣojú ló ń dùn wọ́n ká gba jígí fún pàpàpàpà ṣe torí mi ẹ̀rọ gẹ́gẹ́. Sorry, just one thing. Don't worry, I know where I stopped. I'll take it off from there. Emma Mikon. Do not Mikon. We just sang the same song. Really? You pay Neo. Business. Let me join as a guest. Business. You be my manager. I'm my manager and sing yourself. Come and be my manager. Okay, so let's get back to the book. Again, the book is Christian Mission in Nigeria, 1841 to 1891 by Professor Ajayi. And we already read what happened in 1515 when the Portuguese missionaries got to Benin. Also, going through this thing will also disabuse our minds, especially about matters that have to do with the fact that they force religion on us. People say things. Were there people that religion was forced on? Yes. Was it Yoruba? No. And like I said, two things can be right. It could be, yes, some other people's reality. There's no African idea of everything, to be honest, right? People have they could have a different experience from place to place. In our own case, when we get there, you discover the work that the Saro returnees did on their own before later they were now helped by the missionaries to be able to get Christianity into Yorubaland. Again, this is not about it's good, it's bad. It's just we're studying together, right? It's actually good, in my opinion. I'm a Christian after all. And there's no need to be saying, I want to be objective. It's good. However, when we get into the naughty issues, right, we'll also talk about it. So I'm not trying to hide anything. We're just, get into the depth of it together. So we said earlier what happened in Benin, and after the Portuguese missionaries after they arrived in Benin, the Oba was busy with a war. So in 1538, they came again. Three missionaries arrived in Benin, and the Oba declined. And then much later, another Oba wanted them around 1709, and they got their support. But we're talking about Warri now. So we said in Warri that around 1570s, in the 1570s, the Portuguese had already successfully planted Catholicism in Warri, okay, and of course Olu was a major patron. So we said here that the Oba of Benin, the Olu of Warri, had welcomed Sorry, I'm a bit excited. Sorry. If you're just joining us on YouTube, thank you very much for coming back. Please like the live and share as well. Thank you very much. Okay, we're back, fully back. Back to this now. The Olu decided to enlist Portuguese support. He welcomed Augustinian missionaries from Sao Tome and allowed his 3. The Wari rulers became well known as professing Christians. But the European religion did not spread beyond the court. Even at court, its hold was recognized to be shaky. True Christianity, said the Bishop of Sao Tome in 1620, is almost wholly confined to the king and the prince. The rest only call themselves Christian to please the king. They take their children to baptism only with the greatest reluctance, believing that a baptized child will die immediately. The majority of them take wives without the sacrament of matrimony. They circumcise their children and practice superstitious rites and sorcery. Catholic baptism means little without the sacrament, and the Wari rulers could not even ensure a regular supply of resident clergy to administer them. Eventually, the traditional religion reasserted itself at court, and from 1733 onwards, the ruling family began to turn against Christianity. In the 18th century, the missionary enthusiasm of the Catholic countries of Europe declined. The Protestant countries showed none, and therefore few missionaries came to Wari. By the beginning of the 19th century, there was little to show for the earlier missionary endeavors. Only a few relics like the huge cross in the center of Old Wari, a few church decorations surviving among the traditional shrines, a few memories reflected in oral tradition and in the ritual of traditional gods. Other subsidiary factors hindering Christian missionaries: difficulties of language, of transport, of health, inadequate numbers of missionaries and opportunities compared with their Muslim counterparts. The Christian missionaries labored under great disabilities. All right, why did we come to this? Number one, we're saying Yoruba, and we all agree that there's a connection with folks in Wari, the Shekiri. And if you're looking for a place where Christianity took foothold in the Yoruba very early on, it was in Wari. And it came in through the king, the Olu. And by the way, they started having graduates in the 17th century. Go figure. You can literally go and Google it, Domingos. They started having graduates in Wari that's in the 1600s, in the 17th century. So that's how long it has been there. However, we also read here that got to a particular point where traditional religion reasserted itself in Wari. Now we read about Benin, we read about Wari. There's another place I would like us to read, which is the source of Yoruba people, Ile-Ife. Now, if you read, there are many books, right, that talks about the fact that Christianity got to Yorubaland in the 1800s, right? And sorry, guy, you can't join. Just calm down. In the 1800s, that Christianity got to Yorubaland in the 1800s. If we go by the pattern that we've seen right now, and what I'm about to read, it may be safe or safer to say that Christianity actually was re-established in Yorubaland in the 1800s, not that it got to Yorubaland in the 1800s. And I'm going to read now from, I mentioned two books earlier. There's a book that I wish I could get everybody, and I don't even think you can. I used this book when I was in school. No, I used African Traditional Religion by Bolaji Dowu. Then I got Olodumare, God in Yoruba Belief, much later. And it's just just very lovely. Hopefully you can get it. I'm going to read some to you from two books, like I said, Ife Shrines and Olodumare, God in Yoruba Belief by Bolaji Dowu, who I believe is one of the deepest thinkers as far as religion is concerned. Religion, period. Let's do Ife shrines first. This book was written by Chief Fabumi. By the way, he's not a Christian. No. Excuse me. All right, this is about Okeleri. According to tradition, Ife was a Christian town over 500 years ago. I know that's shocking. By the way, I'm from Ife, so don't panic. According to tradition, this is from Ife Shrines. According to tradition, Ife was a Christian town over 500 years ago when the early Roman Catholic fathers came to Ile-Ife from Benin and built a magnificent church at a place called Okeleri in Ife. By the way, some people don't agree with these things, but this is a tradition. It's not about I shan't agree. That's why I read about Benin earlier. The folks who got to Ife came from Benin. Ife is not close to the sea, and that family relationship between Ife and Benin would make that possible at the time. I'll read again. According to tradition, Ife was a Christian town over 500 years ago when the early Roman Catholic fathers came to Ile-Ife from Benin and built a magnificent church at a place called Okeleri in Ife. The then Oni of Ife was baptized as Thomas John Oni, but after the death of that Oni, the Ife people renounced Christianity, saying that the religion did not help them in their divination. Many of the early Christians were slain and others fled the town, and the church was destroyed. Paganism once more reigned supreme, and the people took a solemn vow at Okeleri never to embrace Christianity again. The revolt against the alien religion was hatched at Igbo-Itakwa, that's the place of revolt, in Ilode ward, on which spot the pagans immediately established the temple of Orishanla, the foremost of the divinities, and there it stands till today. From Igbo-Itakwa, the people went in a procession to Igbo Lokun, where they burnt and buried all the available Christian literature in the town. Finally, they went to Okeleri, demolished the church, and took a solemn vow to renounce Christianity forever. Okeleri, translated into English, means the hill of promise or the hill of the vow. In the olden days, there were 9 important spots in the city where passers-by were forbidden either to look back or to cross paths. Although this taboo has died a natural death since about 50 years ago, the spots are as follows. I don't think I want to talk about the spots. The point is, there's some things I want to talk about here because it doesn't have to do with today's topic. The point is, and that's why I always tell people that when people talk about religious tolerance and mutual respect that we have in Yorubaland, it has gone through several. There's a time that the traditional people and Muslims also fought. This was happened between the traditional people, traditional worshippers, and Christians, and it was violent. Some of the things that we've gone through in the past is what makes our fathers say, let's not go that route again. It's not because they haven't done it before or that they cannot do it. It's just because they have enough sense not to repeat the mistakes of the past. So what we have seen here is that centuries ago, Christianity got into Yorubaland, got to Ile-Ife, right? And that even an Oni became a Christian. But after a while, and it was religious politics for them to use, for certain people, I won't mention right now, to say this thing is affecting our divination. What that means basically is that, and I'll explain this way, it is whittling down it is reducing the influence of the diviners in the land. Because once you turn to that, so let me see in Yorubaland, every deity, all the deities, it wasn't always like that. That's another point. What I'm about to say, concept, is also dated. Let me give it this way. Let me say it this way. Different people could venerate or worship or whatever English you want to use any Irumole or Orisha. But none of those things stopped them from being able to visit the diviner or the priest for divination. In Christianity, you don't have to visit any diviner. If you have more Christians, the influence of diviner in society will greatly reduce. And if the king is a Christian, then the people are protected, that embrace that faith. But as soon as that king moved on, they now felt like they were going to reassert influence and authority. And that was what happened in Ife. Again, I'm from Ife. So this is not, by the way, this is not even a jab. This is history. Okay? So I'm just saying that we have gone through the phase in our history centuries ago where you've had, Bomisio Mioto. That's one. Why is it completely excluded? I just read why. But I'm going to read from another book. Give me a second. Are you Kubo, Fola? Are you Kubo? I'm going to read from Olodumare, God in Yoruba Belief by... Oh, okay. This one is by Olajido, Olodumare, God in Yoruba Belief. In Ile-Ife, there are two localities which are called respectively Oke-Itakpa, the Hill of Revolt, and Oke-Ileri, the Hill of the Vow. And this is the story of how they received their names. There came into Ile-Ife a religion or culture which for a painful period eclipsed the religion of the land because those who brought it along were more powerful than the indigenous people. This may very likely have reference to something of a different origin from the Oduduwa cult. We have a strong suspicion that this religion was Christianity or something with a strong tinge of it, since according to tradition, it is very much connected with books. However, the Ife only bore the imposition grudgingly until they were strong enough to cast off its yoke. When they were sure that they could do this successfully, they appointed a day on which they all assembled and unanimously took a resolution, and they repudiated the alien thing. It is a spot on which the resolution was registered that is called Oke-Itakpa, which signifies that it was there that the Ife revolted against the alien imposition. From Oke-Itakpa, they proceeded in a body to another chosen spot, where they burnt, some elders say buried, all the available literature in the town. After this holocaust of books, they unanimously made a solemn vow, the purpose of which was to seal the resolution already made on Oke-Itakpa. Hence, the second place is called Oke-Ileri, the Hill of the Vow, to mark this final break with the alien thing and they return to their own indigenous cult. The Ife immediately established the temple of Orishanla, the arch divinity on Oke-Itakpa, and there it stands today. But the actual contact of missions with Nigeria, of which we have records there, I'll tell you again. About the actual contact of missions with Nigeria, of which we have records, there are the following facts. G.P. Groves speaks of the missionary activities of the Portuguese and of the Spanish in Benin between 1485 and 1655. So does the Encyclopedia of Religion, and between, so does the Encyclopedia, Jesus is Lord. Sorry. So does the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics speak of missionary activities in Benin, Angola, Upper and Lower Guinea at about the same time. It is not unlikely that ramifications of those early missions reached the Yoruba country, particularly Ile-Ife, which is only 180 miles away from Benin. Nevertheless, we have to take into account the opinion of such authority as Leon Underwood. No, don't bring that to Ofola. Please. No. Don't turn it to a religious conversation, please. I beg. You don't need to lift any cross anywhere. It's not necessary. No. Let's just stick to it. It's not necessary. The many crosses we have across Yorubaland in Ile-Ife, 1 to 1 million. There are crosses all over Ife, including all that Oke-Itakpa area. It's not like, oh, we want to go and do anything. Otiwambe already. They are there. Someone says they play. There's something like they play. They're already there. There are crosses everywhere. There are churches, not just crosses. There are churches in all those places now. But that's not even the point. Let's just stick to the history. Let's not turn it into something religious. Where was I? All right. It says, nevertheless, we have to... Sorry, I have to mute this person. You are just disturbing me. you want to join as guest, go and start your life. God bless you. Where was I? Nevertheless, we have to take into account the opinion of such an authority as Leon Underwood that if a art is prior and superior to that of Benin, and that Benin art appears to have been a development of that of the school of Ife. When we combine this with the story of the destruction of books related above, it seems clear that a completely separate contact from outside had reached Ile-Ife several hundred years ago. This is not to suggest that the origin of the literature should necessarily be identical with that of the bronzes. One question, by the way, is introduction. No, I'll just be reading. I will talk later. One question which still baffles investigation is that of the extinction of sculptors and artists such as produced the works which are now being excavated in Ile-Ife. In connection with this, there's an interesting story told by some Ife elders. So he was about to go into what happened to the sculptors. We'll get into all of that later. The point we have, I'm going to jump to something, I remember. All right. So he says here, for the time being then, all that we know for certain is that there are traces in the Yoruba cults of ancient cultures for which the caliber of the present indigenous people does not fully account. It is also clear that some of the recent finds at Ile-Ife would belong to this category. Before the present system of education was introduced to the country, I'll tell that again. Before the present system of education was introduced into the country, the present Yoruba race could neither read nor write in the Western sense of the terms. They either conveyed their messages orally or communicated with their distant folk by a system of material symbols. Christianity came again into Yorubaland according to recorded history in 1841, pioneered through the slaves who were liberated in Sierra Leone. It came accompanied by Western culture and dressed up in European garb. Its influence for good in the country has been incalculable. It has enlarged men's visions, freed their minds of superstitious shackles, and liberated their spirits from unnecessary fears. In that way, it has given them a progressive outlook and a sense of personal values. Directly or indirectly, it has helped to emphasize the belief of the Yoruba in the supreme God and has impressed upon them the sacredness of human life and human responsibility, thus making for ameliorative adjustments in personal relations. That's a lot. But I'm going to explain some things here. So you see from the two books, from Olodumare, God in Yoruba Belief by Bolaji Dowu, and Ife Shrines by Chief Abumi, that indeed it is true that the people of the book, like a group of people, Christians who had books, lived in Ile-Ife centuries ago. And that what happened, and I won't go deep into it today, but by the way, it's a human thing. It's a human thing. When folks feel their influence is waning, most times they will react. And when you compare the two, what you discover is the fact that those who were supposed to be the influencers in society were not necessarily being consulted any longer. And the people of the book who do not divine, by the way. I'm a Christian, I don't divine. I don't need divination. You know, the Bible is the book, and that's why when the old Wala started, after the king died, they buried or burnt those books. And the reason, of course, again, like I said, it's more politics and personal than actually religious itself. But you see, this is one of the things that I think a lot of people need to also know, that many decisions that people make in the name of religion is not really about the religion. E.g., all these killings happening in Nigeria right now in the name of religion. Maybe some people's religion taught them that, but in reality, it's not that Yoruba religion taught those people to do what they did. They did it because there was political undertone. And if you don't understand what's happening politically, you just be like the masses that can easily be used, which is what is happening with, the Boko Haram people. They tell you that it's because their book is haram, inventions. Sorry, guys. I'm actually doing something really serious. I don't need retards disturbing me. You have people who are, talking about books being haram and everything. They are not doing it because of, they may not necessarily be doing it because of the religion itself, but there are people that will be using other things to get it done. Somebody says economic undertone. That's also there. Because if the people are not divining, then owó wọlé. Do you think this is in any way linked to the evangelism of Mr. Kunle on TikTok? No. No. His own idea is the fact that Israel was Yorubaland, or that Yoruba people are Israelites. That's not true. It started on my page, and I had to shut it down because I think it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The idea that Yoruba people are Israel is actually, it's degrading. It's infradig. It actually reduces who you are as a Yoruba person. When you really think about it, it's an insult to say Yoruba people are Israelites. You know, a lot of us, I'm a Christian, been a Christian for more than 30 years. The thing is, this idea that, oh, we're all Christians, you know, and Israel, we think it's word and like they are synonyms. They're not. That's why Paul had to say to the Galatians that this is the real Israel, this is the real Hebrew. And then he said when God was giving the promise to Abraham, it was given to the seed and not to seeds. And so it was not about his biological children, but the seed, who is Jesus Christ, in whom we all believe. And so he called all of us children of Abraham, but not ethnically. It's more spiritually. I can't throw my ethnicity away because of faith. Meanwhile, Israel is not even about the faith, it's about another ethnicity. And that's why one ethnic group has 12 tribes. Yoruba ethnic group has more than 20 tribes. The Ife, Okun, Ijesha, Ijebu, Awori, Timba Katama Bino, Oyo, Egba, Ijebu, Ijebu, Igbomino. All of these are Yoruba tribes. Just like you have Gad, Benjamin, Manasseh, Ephraim, Reuben, being tribes of Ekiti, Remo, thank you. Just as you have Gad and, you know, Ephraim and Manasseh and Simeon and Levi and Judah being tribes of Israel. That's how all these are also tribes of Yoruba people. When you look at the science of it, there's no connection. And there doesn't have to be. A lot of us have inferiority complex. Elijah, thank you. I know I won't be able to mention everything. Elijah also. So you can be a Christian without having to have anything to do with Israel. And there's no need. And I've said it before, that Israel thing, the first time I got exposed to it, I was in uni. I read this. I still have the book inside. British Israelism. It was British and then Americans. It was around the late 19th, early 20th century. Some of the Protestant ministers also took it up and said they were British, they were Israel, but they were British, but they were Israel, Hebrews. After a while, that thing eventually sailed to black Americans. The way they talk about it today, they insult everybody. Whites are from Edom. Kinikon are the sons of Kinikon. The blacks are the real Hebrews. They are called black Hebrews. Meanwhile, this whole thing was engineered by CIA, but that's another matter on its own. I don't want to talk about it. Maybe they know, maybe they don't know, but they'll be fine. That thing was engineered last century. So when I started noticing that thing was now creeping, and another thing that I noticed with Yoruba, let me say this respectfully. If you're reading history, black history about Africa, please, if you're Yoruba, let me speak to Yoruba, let me leave Africa. If you want to read about your history, read Yoruba authors first. Be grounded before you read other stuff. Because when I read from certain people, I don't want to mention any nationality, what you see mostly is projection of desire. We was kings and queens. We was not all kings. Some of us was kings. Some of us was not kings. And so they push this narrative like, oh, the blacks owned the world, they were this, they were that. There were black slaves. There were black kings. There were black tailors. There were black barbers. Onigba Jamo. We have different things. We was not all kings. That mindset is a mindset that wants to use color to determine history. And that's what you see with the black Hebrews. And that's what I'm seeing now with all these people saying that Yoruba people are Kinikon. If people are, that's their father's business. Me, I'm from Ife. I'm a direct descendant of Oduduwa. I know exactly my family lineage. I have nothing to do with Israeli blood, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I don't hate Israel, by the way. And I think it even makes Israel people, the Israelites or Israelis, respect you more. All this, we are together by force. Someone says black civilization in Spain, but it has nothing to do with Israel. Now that was more. Meanwhile, this small thing, when it Taba like it, we say Moors are black. When we don't like it, we now say that they are not. They are just from North Africa. The black civilization in Spain happened because of the colonization of the Moors, and it took about 700 years. But that's a different conversation. That's Spain. That's not Israel. And even then, we know how they got there and how they eventually were pushed out. But this, what I'm talking about is all this Israel thing. All of that to say that the connection here happened in the 16th century. And that connection is not, that connection, I mean, when did Jerusalem fall? 1770 AD, thereabout. So this is about 400, 500 years. What am I saying? This is more than 1,000 years after the fall of, after the temple was destroyed, though. So, come to us. So, anyway, how do we get here? All this Israel thing. Let's just leave Israel on one side. We are Yoruba. We are good. We are blessed. You know, we are. Even said that Romeo was Jacob. Who said that? You know, one day I was in a meeting. People were talking about Dua and talking about Kenko and Romeo, and I said, a lot of us call those names because they're just names to us. They're just names. We just call names. Romeo did this, Kenko did this, Kenko. There are people who are blood relations of those people. And one day somebody said something, the way I flipped, they couldn't believe it. And I said something, you guys speak as if you are talking about Ere. Like just there. Like it's just something. It's just to you it's an idea. To some people it's the ancestor. It's not just an idea. When a person says Oromio is Jacob, that person is insane. This is what you have when you are forcing an idea. But why would you have to do that? What? I don't want to call anybody insane, but that act is insanity. But I don't want to call anybody insane. People should just understand the fact that these figures are not just figures. They are people's family members. And it's like when somebody came the other day and said, Oromio, Kinikan, Ekaladera, I took it very personal because what you're doing is not just about whatever nonsense you think you're pushing. It's some people's family story. Once you mention a Kaladera, I just flip because the person I can call the person, and I've said it before, they are stupid. You are literally rewriting the history of a family, not of one distant person that you don't think he exists. It's a direct connection that still exists today. I don't think people think just rewriting rubbish. Anyway, where were we? I'm not Israel. My reality, good to see you. I'm not Israel. We are not connected. And even if you look at the evolution of Yoruba people, our identity was formed. I think I mentioned it the other day. If you read the book by Yoruba, The New History by Akinwumi Ogundiran, it places the evolution of the Proto-Yoruboid group. So Proto will be like the first iteration of a thing, right? Proto. So if, for instance, you have, yes, I can go down. If, for instance, you want to release a product in the market, maybe a software or an app, you have a prototype. The prototype is the first, like a first iteration, the first version of that thing, and then you can make others, like the model. Thank you. Your prototype, your model, the first iteration of an idea of a thing. So the Proto-Yoruboid group, that's the first version of our Wato Yoruba, came into existence. This is how he's put it. Came into existence about 2,800 BC. Okay, so that, and this is where he put it. He said by 300 BC, they had existed for 2,500 years. If you put it at 2,800 years, 2,800 BC, my question to people that were shouting this Israel thing is this: how old is Israel? The Hebrew did that. But Hebrew at the time was an appellation, not an ethnicity. When we are doing Bible study now, Jesus is Lord. When Jacob and his family, about 70 of them, moved to Egypt, they had no ethnic identity separate from one. And will be part of that family, even though they are not from the same. They are connected. You could say call them. What's this word? It starts with an M. Start with an M. I don't know if what's the name? Oh dear. The ethnic identity was not Israel. That's what I'm trying to say. They were still with all the other. What's this word? 1 second. I have to remember that. I have to find out what. No, not migrant. Number. I can't believe, sometimes you are thinking many things at the same time. So a particular word, they'll come as Salo. Mesopotamia, yes, they were from Mesopotamia. That's what I was trying to remember. They were from that area, Mesopotamia, that site. Not like they have, and yet they were clans, they were groups, but they were not, there was no nation. There was no nation called Israel, even after 400 years that Jacob had died. There was still no nation called Israel. Moses, who founded, in a way, he was one that founded because he was one that gave them the laws, the very first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Moses, I want to be sure. Yeah, Moses, who gave the laws, right, and created Israel as a nation, was born around 1600 BC. Some would say 1595 BC. So between 1595 and 1650, thereabout. So I usually put it around 1600 BC. I'm going somewhere with this, so am I bombing? At this time, they had been in captivity. They had been in. I'm using the Bible. They had been in Egypt for about 300 years. They were in Egypt for about 300 years. Wait, it was more than 300 years. 390 years. They were in Egypt in the place called Goshen. They were there for 390 years when Moses was born. By the time Moses was leaving them, they have been there for, wait, there's a date I'm trying to remember. 390 plus 40, 430. 390 minus 40. They were there for 350 years by the time I was born. The children of Israel had been in Egypt for 350 years by the time Moses was born. When Moses clocked 40, now I'm going somewhere, it was 350 years. I'm going somewhere, just stay with me. They were in Egypt, they were in Goshen for 350 years at the time Moses was born. Moses was born 1595 BC. There was no Israel as a nation. Meanwhile, Yoruba people had, the Proto-Yoruba group had existed 2,800 years. Sorry, 2,800 BC. And this is 1600 BC. So the gap between them is even more than 1,000 years already, but we're going somewhere. So they had been there 350 years. Moses was born. Moses grows to be 40. He did what he did to try to help a Hebrew, ran away to Midian. He was there for another 40 years, making 80. By the time he was returning, they had been there for 430 years. When Israel left, when the people that would become Israel left Egypt, they had been there for 430 years. So if you add 80 to their age Moses plus 1595, well, let's round it up to 1600. You have about 1630 BC. It was around that time that Moses led the children of Israel out of that place, and they were now in the wilderness for about 38 years. What evidence? I already told you the book. They were now, I'll come back to that. They were now in the wilderness for 38 years. Right? If you read Numbers, you'll see all the story. And then you had Joshua and Caleb, spying the promised land and everything. At the end of the day, by the time Israel could say, okay, we're to one nation, Moses was already dead, and he died at 120. So that means that they were there for 40 years, and then he died, 120. Let's say that it was while they were in the wilderness that they formed the nation, even though you can't really say that. But let us assume that that is what it is. Because normally you will say, okay, they have a land, they had conquered the land, but that would be under Moses. Sorry, that would be under Joshua. But here's my point. Did I say 1585? I meant 1526. Sorry. Between 1520 and 1650. That's where the date of Moses' birth is. Right? Between 1520 and 16. So actually take 1600. I'll say in the middle because I'm not sure. But even if you say 1520, what you still have is this. If, and by the way, this thing I'm saying is from archaeology. This is not, guys, now. This is not just, I think we have been here. The author is a professor of history and archaeology. His name is Akinwumi Ogundiro. The book is called Yoruba, the New History. I don't understand all that. I just brought it so for you to see. But not today. So they've done archaeological work. They've done all of those things. And they've been able to, I mean, like I always say, there is a mythical explanation of the Yoruba origin. Right? There's a historical explanation. There's also the archaeological explanation. Okay? But here's my own point. I don't want to talk about the big dry or the dispersal and how dispersion and how everybody the dispersion and how everybody moved into different parts of Yorubaland. That happened much later. But here's the point I'm trying to make. If the Proto-Yoruba group existed in 2800 BC and Moses was born in 1520 or 1600 BC, you already have a gap of about 1,200 years. And at that 1520 or 16, you know what? Scholars say 1520, some say 1650. That's why I say in the middle. I'm always repeating it because somebody might just say, but I saw something somewhere. Gap Mawang. So if you had 120 years to Moses's 1600, that would be like 1720. Are we? No. Oh, my minus in here. Oh, my minus in here because it's BC. Oh, my minus ne. Oh, my minus ne. Show you ain't got him. Okay, let's do like this to make it easy, just for the sake of this conversation. Easy. Let's say it's 1520. Let's not add it to it because it's BC. We're going to have to remove it. So if it's 1520 or 1526, if you remove 120 years, still be that would be around 1420. 1420 is younger than 1520 because Anka saying it is BC, not AD. I'm speaking Hebrew, don't worry, you get it. So what I'm saying basically is this: by the time you calculate everything, his birth, the distance between his birth and the existence of a Proto-Yoruba group is already 1,200 years on one hand. He will now have to live under 120 years before he will be able to form the nation called Israel. Or between 80 and 120 years, depending on where you're counting from, whether when they left Egypt or when they got to the Promised Land. If you now put everything together, you have nothing less than 1,300 years thereabout between the existence of the Proto-Yoruba group and the existence of a nation called Israel in far away wherever, in their own part of the world. Here's my question. How is it that when the people who are the first model of Yoruba people who existed not across the world, in this same autochthonous to this place, to this Yoruba land, to I don't go into the Niger-Benue conference, but if you don't get it, don't worry, you get it. How on earth will I know that my ancestors existed before the formation of the nation called Israel, and I will now say that I'm connected to Israel because I want to prove that I am from the Middle East? That's the issue. The day you sit down to study your own history as a person and your evolution as a people, that's the day, the kind of pride, not pride of we was kings and queens, so the pride of identity. This is who I am. And like, okay, this is who I am, regardless of what's happening. So when we speak, I don't care what nation you are from. We can sit as equals. Who even knows? Maybe I already formed my own ethnic states before your people even came to be. However, our own concept of political system like we know it today came up in the 80s. Like, it evolved. Oh no, it evolved. I'm not in law, but evolved. So my own point is, all of my tourency is just to say that, and I know that a lot of the things I said here, I was saying it straight, like in real time. If I really want to have this session on, I'll be writing down so you can be seeing it. If you really concentrate on your own history, the kind of pride you're going to have in what your people have achieved and where you're coming from will be too much for you to. For me, I think sincerely, I think it's beneath me to say I'm from Kinikon Nation. Why? Yoruba. You know what it means to be Yoruba? It's a flex. It's an eternal flex. Anyway, God bless Moses, God bless Israel. Israel is a fantastic country. But I don't even think they also like all this attachment by force, which is why a certain ethnic group in Nigeria used to say they are from Israel. Do you know what some Israelis did? Two of them. They came to Nigeria. Their DNA test. There's no connection. You know what? Let's even forget the connection with people say, oh, somebody is Ashkenazi, is Sephardic. Let's leave Ashkenazi for a second. Let's look at even Ethiopian Jews. We know they're Ethiopian Jews. DNA won pa ko mo tan ara bi to wa Nigeria so pa won wa láti Israel. So all of that to say, Yoruba people, just be proud of who you are, right? You learn from others, but you're able to stand tall without thinking that one ethnicity is higher, Israel is higher. There's a lot to learn from Israel, but there's a lot you already have as well. If you go as tabula rasa, then you have nothing to even bring to the table. You're just there, like, okay, kill and so. But if you also say, I know man shebai, I man shebai. You know, for instance, when we are out of today's topic, by the way, it is well. When we have a system of divination, the Hebrews also had a system of divination. You know, if you read 1 Samuel, when the ark was not with David. David was, from Adullam to Hebron, and he was in Hebron. He went to fight for the Philistine kings. By the time he got back, they had taken his wives, the wives of his men and their children, and he wanted to talk to God. What did they use to communicate with God? There was no ark. So what did the priest use? He used Urim and Thummim. What were those things? What was attached to those clothes? What was those? How did they use those stones? The point is just that, yeah. So effort was the cloth. Urim and Thummim was how they communicated with God. There was nothing like mercy seat or anything because they were in Hebron. So how did they use that thing? If you read different cultures across the world, you will see divination in different places. There's geomancy. People use water. People use sand. People use stones. People use crops. Like Yoruba people, we use obi. We use ekro. Different people use different things for divination in different parts. Tea leaves, thank you. In different parts of the world. Cowries came later, but yes, cowries too. And then people use different things in different parts. Now, it tells you something. Even if, big if, even if one learned it from another group. Let me tell you where I'm going with this. This week, I think it was on Wednesday. See, by the way, let me just say, I read sometimes, just read all kinds of things. So I was reading about okay, then so by I was reading about OB divination. Now, here's the thing. Even if I'm a Christian, no, born again. By the way, the book I read earlier, Olodumare, God in Yoruba Belief, the man who wrote all the things I read, was a priest, was a Methodist priest, but he was a scholar of religion. His friend, who was the first indigenous head of Manual College of Theology in Ibadan, wrote a fantastic book on Ifa. Like, it's just amazing how intellectual space works, you know. Anyway, I said all of that to say that I'm not the only one who is a Christian who reads some of these things. Like, we are studying. So I was reading about, I won't even go deep into it to be clear. Reading about OB divination, and I was trying to connect it with Iki. Now, Iki itself also now has different levels to it. Like, only question, only the other one, you know. Educated stream, I think you can help me. Can I say, no, it's not, there's OB. But OB is not usually used these days. Okpele, God bless you, Joba Jaguar. That's what I was looking for. There's OB, there's Ikin, there's Okpele, there are all kinds of things. So here's what I was trying to say. Even if one group taught the other, and I'm not going to say which one taught the other, because I don't know, what you would discover is the fact that one would have owned it to the point where it may be similar in whatever they do, but you can tell that the characteristics or the tools that they're using or the medium is going to be at least a little different based on their own context. It could even be as simple as agriculture. You will not see OB in Israel, but they had divination in Israel as well. All this Turinchi that I'm speaking, just to say that you may even find things so jorawan from culture to culture, from culture to culture. Pọ̀nkọ́ tó máa jẹ́ kéèyàn dára kéèyàn sọ pé nǹkan báyìí làwa ń ṣe bíbí yìí. Ó lè má jẹ́ pé nǹkan lẹ̀ ń ṣe láyé yìí o. Ẹlòmíì lè máa ṣerú ẹ̀ náà o. Right? Àwọn náà ṣe divination o. Ṣùgbọ́n báyìí náà ṣe ń ṣe bíbí yìí. Tẹ́ni ṣe máa bọ́ ṣe máa wọ ẹni yẹn máa yàtọ̀ sí kọ́kọ́ máa sọ pé àwọn òkú mọ̀ kankan báwo lẹ ṣe ń ṣe ẹja rí. Especially in 2025 where, and I'm not speaking specifically about divination. I'm not advocating divination. I'm a Christian. I'm just telling you how, if you assume that you have nothing, the world will treat you like you have nothing. But if you really think that you have something, even what you think is similar to what other people have, the uniqueness in what you have is what will make you stand out wherever you go. Kabbalah is Israel now. Right? That was a long tragedy. Summary of today's session, before we go, is that we're going to go into the ones that happen in the 1800s next week. This one, just introduction, is that while it is true, I have to switch the audio source, please. Keep on Maloku. By the way, I know we left today's topic, but I hope you had a great time. We left at some point, but I hope you had a great time. The thing about knowledge is, I mean, by the but I just want to change the audio source so I can quickly say something. We're gonna have to leave like in the next few minutes. It's Friday. I'm gonna have to go. Just a second, please. Let me switch audio source. All right. Thank you very much. I was saying something, yeah, that it is true that Christianity in Yoruba land, as we know it today, actually got in the 19th century, right? And so on and so forth, and that they are saying it because of the context. The context is that we're looking at it from the 19th century, and when we get into it, we'll talk about it, how the Saros got back to Nigeria, how what they did, for instance, in Abeokuta, how they went inland, even when missionaries weren't able to go inland. How the missionaries eventually got to certain places that they were not, that the Saros and other and CMS guys, they went to other places. For instance, while CMS and the Saros focused on Abeokuta, inland, the Baptists, when they got to Yorubaland, for instance, they didn't bother staying there. They went inland, further inland. That's why I discovered that they went to Ijayi, by the way. And then from there, they covered all those areas into Ogbomoso and Iwo. And that's why you notice that even today, when you go to Ogbomoso, almost everybody is Baptist. If you go to Iwo, almost everybody is Baptist. There's a reason. It goes back to where the Baptist missionaries actually were stationed when they got to Yorubaland. They didn't stay so long in Nyaobeko or Wonulo. So all those things and how those things affect what we have right now. E.g., Bowen University today in Iwo is a product of that journey to Ijayi. These things are connected. That's why I say they are connected. That's why I'm saying that the conversation is not as religious as it is historical. And also we look at the evolution and how this faith birthed the nationalism movement in Nigeria and led to the founding of the first political organization. By the way, the person who formed the first political party in Nigeria, Herbert Macaulay, was a grandson of one of these missionaries, Samuel Ajayi Crowther. Right, we hear about different people like Mojola Gbebi, like Henry Carr, right, like Ajayi Crowther himself. Fantastic things they did, all just to help us understand how the faith itself had evolved. And if we have time, maybe not in this series, but if maybe at some point we can talk about how it was properly domesticated, especially in the 1920s with people like Moses Orimolade. We'll get into all of that later. But what we have done today essentially is to tell us that the Benin-Ife connection, beyond old ancient tradition, and which is real, the thrones being connected, which is real, the artifacts and bronze works and stuff like that, the exchange of ideas, apart from all of those things, there's also the Christian connection, right? As we saw in the book by Chief Emi Fabumi, the book is called Ife Shrines. I talk about Christianity entering Ile-Ife in the 1500s. And I said earlier, I'm from Ife. So it's actually is a flex. We also talked about what led to it being pushed out. It was politics, it was economics, it wasn't religion. And that's why you notice that when we read two books. I like to read more than one on matters like this, right? We read, and by the way, Oketakpa, Okeleri, there are places that exist in Ile-Ife. We read from Ife Shrines by Chief Emi Fabumi, and we read from Olodumare, God in Yoruba Belief by Bolaji Dowu. And both of them agree in many things, right? That Christianity was around. There was an Oin that became Christian, and it made sense that while he was alive, nobody could touch the people that were with him. And a lot of those people also had books. In the 16th century, they had books. And I think if you look deep into this thing, we might open up something more in terms of literacy in Yoruba culture. Anyway, and what could have been if it had been allowed to thrive? But then what happened. But thankfully, in the 1840s, David Hindera, 1840s into 1850s, David Hindera, who had been in Ibadan, traveled to Ife, and he was welcomed by Ife people. But this time, they said something quite interesting. I think that's the place that's where we should end today. What they told David Hindera when he arrived in Ife. Give me a second. 1 second. What Ife elders This, of course, this is now in the 19th century. This is about 300 years afterwards. The other day we were talking about the politics and Alaafin and what Alaafin told Higgins, you know, but we're going to move away from that. Yes, I'm going to read from this book called The History of the Yoruba People by Stephen Adebanji Akintoye. Am I go? The first Europeans to enter Yorubaland. Now, again, our authors, Henry Townsend, that one is a different space now. Let's do one by one. I'm talking about Ife now. We'll talk about Bekuta. Bekuta. I mentioned Bekuta already now. Yeah, Henry Townsend and all that. Did fantastic work, by the way. Created the first newspaper in Nigeria. All right, where was I going? The first Europeans to enter Yorubaland, by the way, and I'm saying now that our authors write sometimes based on the information they have. So when they say here, the first Europeans to enter Yorubaland in the 19th century, knowing what we know now, we discovered that, like I said in the first book that we read from Professor Adeajayi, that it would be they are re-entering, not the first one. It's like another group after what happened hundreds of years ago happened. So when they got to Yorubaland in the 19th century, they encountered myth everywhere. For instance, the Christian missionary to visit, he said the first, but now, let's say the first Protestant Christian missionary, maybe that's a bit easier to swallow, knowing what we know now. So that missionary, the first one, who is Protestant, to visit Ile-Ife in the 1850s, David Hindera, was told after he had finished preaching the Christian gospel to a large crowd at the Palace of Ife. Listen to what Ife elders told him. He was told that all religion originated from Ife, and that what he had preached was no more than one of the versions that had evolved later in a distant part of the world. So David Hindera wrote, Ife is famous as being the seat of idolatry. All the multiple idols of this part of the country are said to emanate from the town, from where the sun and moon rise, where they are buried in the ground. And all people of this country, and even white men, spring from the town. Two things, then we're going to close. The first thing is when they came back, if people were not trying to fight anybody, they had gone to a point where they knew who they were, and what they said was that even this faith you are bringing is from us. In other words, they have become the source of all things, including the white man's ancestors. Which is the flip side. Any Yoruba person who understands identity does not go around trying to become another ethnicity. He will tell the other ethnicity that they came out of him. That's why the Oni says what he says. I know with Nigerian political context, it may sound like you can't say these people came out of us, but from our own perspective as Ife, as Yoruba, the entire world came out of Ife. At a black or white, Chinese, we don't care. Everybody was formed in Ife. That mindset does something to how you relate with the world. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand when we talk about this whole Israel thing. But to close it, when they eventually came, they were told the sun and the moon, they rise and set in Ife. The religion you have brought, he was allowed to preach in front of the palace. This was hundreds of years later. He was allowed to preach in front of the palace, and he was told that this one is just like another religion. And they welcomed it, and they had no problem with it. And since that time in the 1850s up until today, Christianity has grown, as well is well established in Ile-Ife and across Yorubaland. And just like Islam and even traditional religion, we have found an amazing balance, right? Even when you bring other religions, and by the way, people think they're just three. I've seen other temples in Yorubaland. I've seen Hare Krishna, I've seen Grail, I've seen Ekanka, I've seen things that we don't usually talk about in our conversations about Christianity in Yorubaland. Next week we're going to go deeper into the series. Somebody says, what do they worship at Guru Maharaji? What or who? I think it should be who. And you already mentioned him there. I don't know if they worship him. I don't know how they do their thing, but it's not so. Let me say, from a knowledge of the knowledge of Hinduism that I know, I don't think it's different from what you have with the gurus in India. They are the representation of deities. They acknowledge the deities exist, like Shiva and the rest of them, but they are like the physical. Some believe that the gurus are a physical representation of those deities. They can communicate whatever to you and stuff. I saw one once. The man is Indian. Man. Let's just leave it at that. So yes, I think it's the person go to meditate your booking there be connection with one and why are you laughing? You know, it's not everything you can be saying in public, no need. But I mean, the important thing is that that's what they've chosen. There's Guru Maharaj in Ibadan. It's in this same Yorubaland. But all right. Meanwhile, let me end by saying something. I think educated stream will understand this thing. Last week, I had an interaction with someone on Twitter. So somebody sent me a quote of a Muslim who, to be honest, was saying was not very right about Yoruba and Yoruba politics, Yoruba religion. But there's something that the guy did. He invoked a particular idea, Odumole, and I was like, go and look at even there is Odumole in Ifa. So the other person was like, it doesn't exist. I was like, it exists. Now I said, but there is no Odumole, and I said, in truth, you will not see Odumole like you will see Oyeku or Iwari. You won't see Odumole like that. It's basically just a collection of verses or references to Imole. Some people will die and say it doesn't exist. Me, I'm like, if I show you books that go back more than 50 years on this matter, would you agree? So the same way we can have that conversation, which I'm not having tonight. You remember Educated Stream, Abi? And I said that the Muslim guy that's quoting Odumole, he has never read it because he's saying that even Odumole talks about Sharia. And I said it's a critique of Islam. Just about all the references to Imole is a critique of Islam, of Sharia, of different things. Is not what's the word now? They're not affirming the ideas, they are critiquing the ideas. You know, but people say it doesn't. I spoke to Olu, he said it doesn't exist. And I said, because tell me which Odu is Odumole in all the 16 Odus. There's nothing like that now. You will not find one Odu that is called Odumole, but one coin or ronye, but one coin in Koton so. I think it was the person's question that haven't got me to reading all this OB thing. No, it wasn't OB thing, it was something else. I had to now go and read, stuff. I'm like, in Otura, the references are in Otura, I mean, there are many references in different Odus, by the way. So there's some references in Otura. And I was reading, I was like, if I go and share with these people now, they'll just scatter everywhere. So let's just leave it alone. Something you just know and keep it in your stomach. But the point of the matter is that I'm getting OG. And we can all study those things as from a scholastic perspective, not necessarily from a religious or sacred perspective. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've gotten one or two things. And don't, if you're a Yoruba person, you're a Yoruba man, a Yoruba woman. Israeli ko necessary. For a man, so Yoruba film, ko necessary. All right. 9:02. Sir, will you be my history teacher? We're already teaching ourselves now. You teach me, I'll teach you. We're all here together. We're all here together. We're all learning together. There's a lot to learn. That's the funny thing about this whole thing. You learn. I think the ones who tell you that they have nothing more to learn, the ones who have not really learned anything, the more you learn, the more you discover how ignorant you are. Like, let me make you laugh. I was reading a book on something, and the person now referenced a book. That book is Ade Ajayi's book. So I had to go and get that book. You now get that one, you now see references. By the time you are done, you know that you don't know anything. Oh, let me not say you don't know anything, but I like to think like, I think knowledge exposes. Let me say it this way: knowledge exposes your ignorance. That's how I see it. Everything I know sometimes also opens me up to things I don't know, and I think it keeps you humble. You can't get to a place and say, okay, I was talking to somebody that Ben said, we're talking about the Civil War. Ben said, I've read all the books on the Civil War. I was like, because he was talking like the most ignorant person. You have not read more than one. For you to be talking this stupidly, I've read all the books. That is not, if you are really a studious person, even if you have all the facts, you still leave that allowance. Possible but who is to say that something else can't be added to that thing? So the more you read, the more you discover that there's something I don't know, and then you read, and then so that's why we all come here together and we learn. And you might mention a book right now, you see me in a bookshop looking for the book, because we're all trying to grow together. Let me read some of the comments so that way. Kubo has left us on TikTok and gone back to that's our YouTube class captain. Kubo is back on YouTube. So let me read some of the comments on YouTube, and then we'll call it. I apologize, I won't be able to bring people up. It's already past 9. But Monday we'll start early. News in my program. But it is well. Alright, let's start with YouTube. Someone says, who is Bolaji Dowo's friend you mentioned now? Dr. Adegbola. Let me see. I'll say, let me find you the title. I wrote it somewhere. Both of them were, I think, both a Methodist. Rajido was a Methodist priest. They were allowed to. The book is on Ifa. How if I go on? Don't bá lọ gbọ́ pé mi rántí orúkọ ẹ̀ sọ́n ní fún mi lẹ́gbàá báyìí. Ẹ fún mi ìṣẹ́jú kan, máa wá fún yín sìn. Gbogbo ẹ̀yin èèyàn mi, ẹ fún mi ìṣẹ́jú kan, wọ́n bọ̀. I have the book somewhere inside. He's a reverend, by the way. Found it. Ifa and Christianity among the Yoruba, a study in the symbiosis and the development of Yoruba Christology, 1819 to 1940. It was his PhD thesis in 1976. Reverend Ebenezer Adeolu Adegbola. That was the first indigenous head of Emmanuel College of Theology. The book is, again, it's from University of Bristol. Ifa and Christianity among the Yoruba, a study in symbiosis and the development of Yoruba, a study in symbiosis and in the development of Yoruba Christology. That thesis, the day they were telling me the story of that thesis, people have done things in this Yorubaland. A person must be very, very proud to not acknowledge, we know something, but compared to some people, this is a book that's still in print. It's not a book, it's a thesis. I held that thesis in my hand the other day. I was like, Jesus is Lord. 1976. People have worked. He's a gentleman reverend. By the way, I think the book is going to come out soon. The book is going to come out soon. But the thesis itself, I will get back to you on that. I always ask, and I'll get back to you on that. But the thesis itself is I'll try it out because that thing is bulky, and it's a lot of. Well, they told me about what they had to go through to create to. Because let me even give you an idea. So let's say, for instance, you want to write SFR, SFR. And this was the time when there were no computers. Stencil. It just humbles you, like how much people have given to study all these things. You should read The Pastor and the Babalawo, a short journal. Taloko. Guys, I'm chatting with somebody in the comment section, just in case you are wondering why I'm talking like this. Somebody's typing in the comment section, so I'm chatting. Anyway, let me read some of the things here on YouTube, but let me get that title first. All right, where was I? YouTube. So someone says the blacks came from the Nubians who were in Sudan and southern Egypt. The blacks came from the Nubians who were in Sudan and southern Egypt. JDYP, okay. Sure. Funny enough, as we were talking about it, I found it. But thank you. I'll see if I can maybe find a place I can get it over the weekend. What was I saying? The blacks came from the Nubians who were in Sudan and southern Egypt. So, I mean, I can't say it's not true. It depends on how you look at it. Right. So, for instance, if you read, let's just use Bible for a second. Genesis 9 and 10. 9 and 10 talks about the children of Noah. There's Shem, there's Ham, and Japheth. And our concern is Ham. And Ham had Mizraim, he had Cush. There's another one. Egypt is Mizraim, Cush is Ethiopia, and Lud or Libya. Now, what is known about them is that they are blacks. So, according to that version, so they'll be descendants of Ham. So, if you say we are from, Egypt in the sense of Cush, yes. But Sudan, we have to remember. Someone says, "Sir, is Noah black? And what about the Ark of Noah?" Or Nick keeps talking about. Hey, are you going to leave here today? Let me finish this one, I beg. So, if you use the Bible interpretation, you can say all of us are from Ham. But that Sudan bit, I'm very careful with it because of the controversy that came out of that in the 70s and 80s about the particular subgroup of the Yoruba people saying they're from Sudan. The part that they have to remember when it comes to that is that the entire black race was known to certain people as Sudan. The Arabs, they called all of us Sudan. So whether you are in Nigeria or South Africa, you are Sudan, because they're talking about the land of the blacks. So it's about skin color, not about geography, right? So the idea of coming from Sudan is something, it's possible, but we have to remember that Nigeria was Sudan to Arabs. I hope I answered that question, but yeah. And the other question was Noah black? I don't know. Could he have been black? Possibly. Possibly. And I say that advisedly. There's a paper by Francis Kras Elsing. I think that's his name. That's her name. Well, you see, the only color that can give birth to all other colors is black. Let me just put it that way. The only color that can give birth to all other colors is black. Whether now was not black or not, though, I don't know. The other part, the arc that Oni keeps talking about. Listen, that arc, my aunt used to talk about it as well. I grew up hearing that the arc of now was in our hometown. Like, I grew up hearing it. This is what I can say about it, personally. It seems that the flood event was a largely universal event, and that different cultures across the world have similar stories of a period of great flood. And some of them have things like that. So, for instance, in Ife, there's a story of a great flood. And the survivors are the ones that lived in the epoch or the era that we know as Ife Oyelagbo. So, so that flood story is true. Whether the ark or whether what we have in Ife is not the one that belongs to Noah, I don't know. I don't know. But I don't know how. I don't know how it could have been that. And then lastly on YouTube, someone says, but there's no single trace of ancient Christianity in Ife. Not even, how would there be a single trace when they destroyed every trace? That's what we read. Meanwhile, we used to say certain things that we call we used to say that certain things that we call traditional did not come from, and I mentioned did not come from other spaces. We've mentioned examples already, e.g. I mean, there are deities that we got from, not even one from Nupe. By the way, we also exported our deities too, so it's not, I don't know, some people don't like to hear that thing, Sha. Saying, no, everything came from us. Unless, for you to say everything came from you that you're practicing, it means that you are not exposed. And Yoruba people don't have a right to say that thing because we are very exposed. So we gave and we received. Anyway, thank you for listening. Egungun is from, of course. Egungun, I can see it right now. Egunoko from Nupe. But today it's ours. But we are culturally aware enough to acknowledge where we got some things from. Anybody who says that thing is not, I didn't get from anywhere, it's from me, that person is has not evolved culturally, has not evolved. Is primitive. And we know one of their children is the one insulting me in the comment section. I went off. What Christian thing was deleted from Ife? It's another series. It's another session. We'll talk about it next time. I have to go. My kids are about to sleep. Someone says same way they use owl. Oh, I saw the Fulani stream. You don't. I always ask, so you don't know the. You've not heard anything yet. I've been called all kinds of things. See the other person that came that said that is. I'm used to it. The one I'm getting on Twitter right now, that one, and YouTube. I think YouTube just left me today. Yesterday was fire, and day after yesterday, I don't know. And the funny thing is this: these clowns cannot argue. They can't present any facts. They just curse and curse and curse and curse. They'll be all right. Just remember, I didn't put up the account details. If you want to support what we're doing, please reach out to me at Busui Oris on Telegram. Or I'll do this. While we're playing the anthems, I'll put up the account details. If you want to support, please use the bank details to support what we're doing. We're going to continue this on Monday. We have the sessions every weekday, Monday to Friday, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. We don't come on YouTube exactly 4 because we'll spend some time listening to music on TikTok because I have to like this thing and get it ready because of the way TikTok works. But we start 4 or before 4 on TikTok. So please join us on Monday. We're going to continue this series. Then we'll begin to go to the practical things that have to do with evolution of Christianity in Yorubaland and also appreciate the ingenuity of our forebears. Thank you very much for listening. I apologize if you want to come up and I can't bring you up. It's because it's pretty late and I want to be able to have some fatherly duties. All right. Eshio. Someone says, actually, the Ife Amadayake traditionalists behave like people who have offended God. No, don't say that. That's not true. By the way, let's also be careful of saying Ife Amadayake. Amadayake is a recent creation. No? It's a recent creation. But, I mean, it's not the same. They are also connected to Ife, apparently. They are also Yoruba people, but we can't say something like and say let me give an example. But you get, but what you are saying, that thing is so harsh now. The traditionalists, in my experience, they are not bad, they are not harsh people, though. No, they were not guests. No. See, Ife is home to all of us, regardless of where you are from, as a Yoruba. In fact, the world, the God self, especially as Yoruba, Ife is your home. So I don't want to use the word guest. It's home to every Yoruba person. But Ife history, Modaka did not even come into the picture until like not too long ago. It was until Oyo broke apart, which was just about 200 years ago. Everybody was in a different place. It was what happened with Oyo Empire that caused Modeke to move into that place. But everybody is from Ife, including Modeke or at Oyo, at Ilao, at Abeokuta. Everybody, we are all is our home. So what caused recent tensions? That's not today's topic, please. I have to go. Let's have our anthems. I said I'm going to put up the account. If you want to support us, please use the bank details or reach out to me on Telegram at Busui Oris, and then we can talk about it. Thank you very much for being part of today's session. I want to thank everybody who has liked. Everyone who has liked the live, you have shared, you have partahed, you've commented across the different platforms, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, everywhere. Thank you very much for your support. And those who have given gifts, I've seen hats, we don't usually do live goals, all right? I've been told to do it. Maybe I would think about it, but even without having to do live goals, thank you very much for your support and your generosity. If you'd like to support what we're doing with cash, please use the bank details up there. We'll really appreciate your support. We're going to continue this on Monday. We're going to have a great time. Okay? Thank you very much for being here. Listen to the Nigerian anthem and the Yoruba anthem, then we'll call it a day. Here's the Nigerian. 1 second. I have to connect it. we have to listen to the Nigerian anthem and then the Yoruba anthem. Esho. And thank you to my moderators in the comment section. First, Sean Oguns, My Reality, J Links. Thank you, sir. All right. Here's the Nigerian anthem. Take a listen.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all are proud to serve our sovereign motherland. Our flag shall be a symbol that truth and justice reign. In peace or battle honored, and this we count as gain. To hand unto our children a banner without name. O Lord of all creation, grant this our one request. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed. And so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed. Nigeria may be iṣẹ́ wa fúnlẹ̀ wa, fún ilẹ̀-èdè wa. Kàgbéga, kàgbéga, kàgbéga fáyé rí. Ìgbàgbọ́ wa ni pé bá ti bẹ̀rù làbọ̀ mọ́. Ká ṣiṣẹ́, ká ṣiṣẹ́, ká ṣiṣẹ́, ká jọlá. Ìṣọ̀kan àti òmìnira ni ẹ jẹ́ ká máa lépa. Tẹ̀síwájú fọ̀pọ̀ ire àtòhun tó dára. Ọmọ òdàdìde bọ́ sípò ẹ̀tọ́ rẹ̀. Ìwọ ni ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògo adúláwọ̀.
Àwa ni ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògo adúláwọ̀, ìmọ́lẹ̀ wo ni wọ́n kùn lágbára Ọlọ́run. Ilẹ̀ Yorùbá ò ní bàjẹ́, Nàìjíríà náà ò ní bàjẹ́. Nǹkan tó bá dọwọ́ lé, ó máa yọrí sí rere ní lágbára Ọlọ́run. A lot of things are happening right now. We're seeing things happen with SWDC, Dawn Commission. We're praying that all these things that they're planning with NRC, all these plans that they have will come to fruition. That Yorubaland will continue to grow and develop. Nigeria will know peace. There's peace within our borders, and we will do well and advance in every way. Thank you very much for being part of today's session. We're going to have